Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vogenjani Vanabe Africa. Welcome to this show that keeps you abreast with the latest happening across the continent and beyond every weekday morning. Today is Tuesday and we are encouraging you to choose yourself. My name is Aina Raizakoya alongside Diana Master. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fantastic.
Are you choosing yourself or are you choosing happiness?
Girl, I choose myself every day,
of course.
Every second, 247.
As it should be.
365 days.
366. All right, now let's get into what you can expect in today's broadcast. Kenyan women claim sex abuse in British tea-owned farms. Former Burkina Faso leader Sankara to be reburied this week. UN says AI poses serious risk for human rights. We're also going to be chatting to Mr. Mike Sichula in Zambia to keep us updated on the latest news on the ground. We'll be back with our top stories right after this.
This morning, we start with news from Kenya. Kenyan women claim sex abuse in British-owned tea farms. More than 70 women working on a 2 British-owned tea plantation in Kenya have told the BBC they were forced to have sex by their managers to retain their jobs. Undercover filming by the BBC caught local bosses pressuring a female worker for sex. The two firms, Unilever and James Finlay & Co., says these managers have now been suspended. Unilever sold its tea operation in Kenya while the BBC was filming. The other owner said it had launched a full independent investigation. One of Britain's biggest supermarket chain, Sainsbury's, called the allegations horrific and said they had no place in its supply chain.
Now, former Burkina Faso leader Sankara to be reburied this week. The body of Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara is to be buried on Thursday alongside 12 comrades at the spot where they were assassinated in a coup 3 decades ago, the country's junta has said. No date had previously been set for the reburial announced earlier this month. The burial of the remains of Captain Thomas Sankara and his 12 companions murdered on October 15, 1987 will take place on Thursday, February 23, said Communications Minister Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo in a press release Friday. Ouedraogo said the ceremony, which Sankara's family have said they will not attend, will happen on the site of Thomas Sankara Memorial, erected on the site of his assassination. Sankara came to power in August 1983 as an army captain, aged 33. Nicknamed Africa's Che Guevara, he was a fiery Marxist-Leninist who blasted the West for neocolonialism and hypocrisy. He changed the country's name from the colonial era Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of honest men, and pushed through a range of reforms, including promoting vaccination and banning female genital mutilation.
UN says AL possesses serious risks for human rights. The United Nations Rights Chief on Saturday warned that recent advances in artificial intelligence pose a grave threat to human rights and called for safeguards to prevent violations. This week, more than 60 nations, including the United States and China, called for regulating AL in defense to ensure it does not undermine international security, stability, and accountability. There have been increasing concerns over things such as AI-guided drones, slaughter bots that can kill with no human intervention, and the risk that artificial intelligence could escalate a military conflict. I am deeply disturbed by the potential for harm of recent advances in artificial intelligence. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk, said human agencies, human dignity, and all human rights are at serious risk. This is an urgent call for both business and governments to develop quick, effective guardrails that are so urgently needed, he said.
And now moving over to our next story, new African Union chair brings controversial record to top post. Azali Assoumani, who took over as African Union chair for the next 12 months, loves power and has not hesitated to throw opponents in jail or change the law to remain in control. The 64-year-old leader of the small Indian Ocean archipelago of the Comoros, with less than 1 million people, succeeds Senegal's Macky Sall for the rotating leadership of the continental body. Assoumani is listed among a dozen sub-Saharan African leaders who have sought to extend their time in office through constitutional change in recent decades. A former Army of Chief Staff, Colonel Assoumani, initially came to power in a coup in 1999 in one of the many military takeovers that have rocked the island since independence from France in 1975. In 2002, he won the presidential election for the Union of Comoros, which is made up of 3 semi-autonomous islands, each with its own separate president. He had reluctantly handed over to civilians in 2006 under a new constitution that establishes a rotating presidency between the 3 islands of the Union, Grande Comore, Anjouan and Moheli. He then retired into farming before returning to politics and winning re-election in 2016 in a vote marred by violence and allegations of irregularities. Leaving power was a mistake and not to be repeated, Assoumani once told a diplomat in the capital, Moroni.
New mosquitoes bring year-round malaria to Kenya. Kenyan researchers have detected a mosquito native to South Asia that is resistant to insecticides used in Africa. Experts from the Kenyan Medical Research Institute identified the mosquitoes Anopheles stephansi during a routine surveillance in the northern Marsabit County. Data from hospitals, they also showed an increase in malaria cases, even though it was not the normal season for the disease, as local mosquitoes don't do well in dry areas. This invasive mosquito can thrive in both dry and rainy season and can breed anywhere. In other countries, its larvae have been found in water containers in urban centers. Experts are concerned that malaria transmission will now continue all year round instead of being seasonal.
And now bringing us to the end of our top stories, Tunisia expels European Trade Union chief for taking part in protest. Tunisia expelled the head of the European Trade Union Confederation on Saturday after she took part in an anti-government protest organized by the country's UGTT union, one of Tunisia's leading political forces. The UGTT said the expulsion was shocking and opened up a confrontation with labor unions around the world. Tunisian President Kais Saied declared the ETUC's Esther Lynch persona non grata and said the Irish citizen must leave the country within 24 hours. Lynch's participation in the protests and remarks she made were a blatant interference in Tunisian affairs, the government said. Thousands of members of the UGTT took to the streets of 8 Tunisian cities on Saturday to protest against Saied's policies, accusing him of trying to stifle basic freedoms, including union rights. Addressing one of the protests, Lynch called for the immediate release of detained union officials. Burkina Faso marks official end of French military operations on its soil. We condemn this shocking decision. It not only contains a confrontation against UGTT, but rather with the international union movement, Sami Tari, the senior official in the UGTT, told Reuters. He added that Lynch was being harassed and even prevented from leaving her hotel for dinner.
After the break, we bring you news from Zambia with Master Mike Sichula.
The My.NA Cars Show provides viewers with the best in-class cars content, engaging interviews, as well as a showcase of the latest cars-related news, products, and services. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact My.NA at synergy.com.na. My.NA Cars, more than just a ride.
We're now going to be crossing over to Zambia to speak to Mr. Mike Sichula to give us the latest news on the ground. Good morning, Mr. Sichula. It seems we can't hear Mr. Mike Sichula. We're going to try again. Good morning, Mr. Sichula. All right, we'll be back with Mr. Mike Sichula. We'll try again, but for now, let's take a look at the weather predictions.
Before we cross over to Zambia to have our much anticipated chat with Master Mike Sichula, let's get into our economic news. South Africa's Eskom ramp up power cuts to stage 6. South Africa's state power utility Eskom on Saturday said it would implement stage 6 power cuts continuously until further notice due to breakdown of 8 generation units on Sunday afternoon. Further changes on the stages of load shedding at short notice are possible given the high number of breakdowns, Eskom said in a statement. Eskom has been implementing the worst rolling blackouts in South Africa on record, leaving households in the dark, disrupting manufacturing and hurting businesses of all sizes, leading to President Cyril Ramaphosa declaring a national state of disaster earlier this month over his country's crippling power shortages. The stage 6 power cuts, the worst outage level on record, requires up to 6,000 megawatts to be shared from the national grid and mean up to 10 hours a day without power for some South Africans.
Now, Botswana says it's ready to walk away from De Beers deal. Botswana President Mokgweetsi Masisi said his government is prepared to walk away from its negotiations with De Beers if he is not satisfied with the division of revenues from the diamond trade. Speaking at a ruling party rally near the capital Sunday, Masisi described the ongoing talks with De Beers as shaking a giant and added that the country was resolute in its position. Botswana relies on diamonds to generate 90% of its exports. These are our diamonds, and we want a larger share for us. But through negotiations, Masisi said, if it gets difficult and talks fail, we will have to say, let's go our separate way. De Beers, a unit of Anglo-American, and the government have been negotiating since 2018 for a new deal governing the sales of rough diamonds from the world's second largest producer. The current agreement expired in September 2020, but was extended several times, initially because of the pandemic. Last year, the sides agreed to keep the deal going until June. The pact is one of the industry's most valuable covenants, and the delays are unnerving an ecosystem that includes contractors, slide holders, factories, retailers, and financiers.
Let's have a look at our economic indicators.
We're hoping for some good news. Let's try to connect to Mr. Mike Sichula in Zambia. Good morning, Mr. Sichula.
Good morning, and Africa, good morning to our viewers.
It's good to hear you. I can definitely say that. Now let's start off. A body of engineers has attributed the current floods being experienced in Lusaka and other parts of Zambia to poor planning by city authorities. Why are they saying this?
Yes, this has been attributed, this has been said by Engineers Institute of Zambia President, Mr. Ebo Ngandu, who says local authorities need to employ more engineering professionals to improve city planning. He says planning is conducted in local authorities as a one-off activity rather than a continuous process as new infrastructure are constructed frequently. As you can see from that video, water is coming from an office and it's waterlogged. People cannot work. Nothing is happening because the water has just flooded the entire office space. The situation has also been different in houses. As you can see from the picture there, water has just submerged the entire house. People have been evacuated elsewhere. So this is the problem that has been happening in Zambia because of the increased in rainfall activities. As you can also see from that shop, water all over, and people and just have to improvise in order for them to do something. So according to him, he says there need to be an update design patterns of bridges, water crossings to the current prevailing climate change trends.
All right, Master Sichula, we move on to your next story. Chairman Ambassador to Zambia, Mr. N. Mitchell, has asked international creditors to help Zambia get out of its debt situation so that the government can focus on providing services for citizens. Please tell us more.
Yes, the German ambassador says the current debt crisis needs all creditors to be involved so that Zambia can restructure it with the help of all stakeholders. She says she has also called on Zambians to understand and appreciate efforts the government is doing to come up out of the debt crisis. The German envoy says the removal of subsidies is one of the measures that Zambia needs to understand. Zambians needs to understand because it is creating savings which will be taken to other needy areas. Zambia owes the international community over 30 billion United States dollars, and creditors have been meeting to see how this money can be restructured. But there has not been any breakthrough yet, and the delay is what the German ambassador seems to be concerned because it is affecting delivery of services to citizens by the government of Zambia.
All right, now authorities have started the evaluation and review of the school curriculum to ascertain what needs to be modified and changed. As briefly as you can, please, Mr. Sichula.
Yes, according to Ministry of Education Permanent Secretary Joe Kamoko, says the curriculum plays an important role in preparing learners to tackle various challenges such as gender equality, climate change, among others. He says the curriculum is a vehicle for transformation and should not be only build the learners academically, but also open up their mind to find solutions to current and future problems. Hence the need that the curriculum should be modified to meet modern standards.
All right, now experts in the transport sectors have developed a draft piece of legislation containing proposed guidelines on the operation of online taxi services. Tell us about this.
According to the Minister of Transport and Logistics, Frank Tayari, says the draft document has been sent to the Ministry of Justice to ensure that all proposed regulations are within the law. Mr. Tayari says the document is approved by legal experts. It will be tabled before Cabinet to further debate and possible adoptions. This is coming about because of online service taxis such as Yango and Orlando, among others, which has been competing against traditional taxi businesses, where there have been a conflict on whether the online are legally guided by Zambia or not. So they are trying to find a harmony between the two taxi operators so that they should operate in harmony.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sichula, for bringing us the latest news on the ground.
Thank you so much, Africa. Good morning.
Now let's take a look at the sports package with Ari Khoukhad.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, starting off with cricket news. The T20 Women's World Cup continuing in South Africa. It's coming up for semi-finals on Thursday and Friday this week, and it is in Group B. England and India that's through to the semi-finals already. England will play either South Africa or New Zealand. That will be determined on Tuesday when South Africa play Bangladesh. If South Africa beat Bangladesh in their last round-robin game, they will play England in the semi-final. But if South Africa lose to Bangladesh, it will be New Zealand that will face against England. The other semi-final, it will be India that will play against Australia. The semi-finals will be Thursday and Friday in Cape Town. The final will also be in Cape Town. That will be played this coming Sunday. Staying with cricket, Test cricket, 2 test matches concluded, and it was in New Zealand, a good result for England. England that beat New Zealand in the first test by 267 runs in the first 5-day test, and also a good result for India. That game is played at home for India. The second test, it is India that beat Australia by 6 wickets. They lead that series now by 2-0. Going on to rugby news, and it is this weekend the Six Nations that will continue. It will be Italy that will host Ireland, and then also France that will host Scotland, and then the big game Wales that will host England. But Wales-England game is in jeopardy in a way. There's even threats of a strike by players of Wales. That's all got to do with player contracts that's not concluded. That's for the 4 franchises, the Dragons, Cardiff, Ospreys and Scarlets. Those are the 4 franchises in Welsh rugby. These 4 franchises also not doing well at the moment in the United Rugby Championship. Many of the players' contracts come to end at June, and those new contracts have not yet been confirmed for players. So it is the Professional Rugby Board of Wales that needs to confirm that still. Wales Rugby Players Association said that they might even strike for this coming Saturday's game when Wales host England. That will be unprecedented, never happened before. But former captain Alan Wynne-Jones, he said that that would be the last option for players. Hopefully they can resolve it, and that the contracts will be in place before Saturday's game when Wales host England. That will be in Cardiff. Continuing international sports news with tennis news, and it is Carlos Alcaraz, the former world number 1. He's just 19 years old. He came back from 4 months of injury, successfully so. He won the Argentinian Grand Prix that was on clay. He beat the Great Britain's Cameron Norrie in the final by 6-3 and 7-5. He was out for 4 months with injury, but still is number 2 in the world at the moment. He was overtaken by Novak Djokovic as the world number 1. Djokovic that won the Australian Open a few weeks ago. He is currently number 1 in tennis. Also on the men's ATP tour, it was the ABM AMRO tour tournament that was played in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. There it was Daniil Medvedev of Russia that won. He moved up from number 11 in the world now to number 8 in the world. He beat Yannick Sinner in the final. Sinner also moving up 2 places to number 12. The Tsitsipas still number 3 in the world after the rankings came out. Closing off today's international sports news with golf news, and staying with world rankings, it is new world number 1 in golf as well. It's Jon Rahm that is the new world number 1 after winning the Genesis Invitational on the PGA Tour.
And that brings us to the end of our show. But before we say goodbye, let's take a look at the highlights. Kenyan women claim sex abuse in British-owned tea farms. Former Burkina Faso leader Sankara to be reburied this week. UN says AI poses serious risk for human rights. South Africa's Eskom ramps up power cuts to stage 6.
Those have been our stories. Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. Please do remember that we welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can post them on our Facebook and Twitter pages. And on that note, it's all our love and all our light. Happy Tuesday.